The concept that ultimately crystallized into Operation Paperclip was initiated in the shadows of the collapsing Third Reich under a project first known as Operation Overcast and later temporarily designated JCS Project 1067. The fundamental strategic imperative was purely defensive, to decisively prevent Germany's extensive and highly advanced scientific and technical knowledge, and more importantly, the crucial individuals who embodied that knowledge from falling into the hands of the emerging rival, the Soviet Union. As Allied forces rapidly advanced into captured German territories, specialized teams, primarily under the auspices of the Technical Industrial Intelligence Committee, TIIC, meticulously searched thousands of secret laboratories, highly advanced factories, and specialized research centers. The initial cautious focus was strictly on documenting German advances, meticulously collecting blueprints and reports. But this mission swiftly and decisively shifted to the more aggressive and critical task of actively recruiting and extracting the scientists and engineers themselves before the Soviets could reach them. The formal, more notorious name Operation Paperclip was officially adopted in the late autumn of 1945, cementing the program's enduring controversial identity. This name change was necessitated by a critical administrative problem. The initial recruitment lists, painstakingly compiled by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, JCS, frequently contained the names of highly desirable scientists who were also former members of the Nazi Party, NSDAP, veterans of the SS, or individuals with known, active sympathies for the Nazi regime. To circumvent an explicit and morally mandated order from President Harry S. Truman, which categorically forbade the immigration of any individual with known Nazi affiliations, the military officers handling the highly sensitive files simply attached a standard paperclip to the outside of the subject's dossier. This simple, cynical administrative act symbolically clipped away the controversial criminal past from the immediate overwhelming requirement for crucial scientific expertise, providing the necessary bureaucratic green light for their rapid recruitment and subsequent immigration to the United States. The singularly most potent driving factor behind the rapid escalation and execution of Operation Paperclip was the intensely accelerating geopolitical tension that immediately followed the cessation of hostilities in Europe, marking the irreversible dawn of the Cold War. With the essential wartime alliance against Nazi Germany rapidly dissolving into mutual suspicion, the United States and the Soviet Union instantly became entrenched ideological and technological rivals. Both nascent superpowers immediately recognized that Germany's spectacular wartime advances, particularly in long-range rocketry, the V2 program, revolutionary jet propulsion systems, and cutting-edge aerodynamics, held the non-negotiable key to future global military and economic supremacy. The aggressive recruitment of these German experts was thus a direct, frantic attempt to gain an immediate, decisive edge in the immediate technological arms race by acquiring superior human capital, a concept that quickly became known as brain drain. The most prominent, politically sensitive, and undeniably consequential target of Operation Paperclip was the celebrated, infamous rocket development team from the Military Research Center at Peenemünde, led by the charismatic and ambitious Wernher von Braun. Recognizing the impending and far harsher Soviet threat, von Braun and a core group of approximately 120 of his most critical engineers and top scientists executed a calculated strategic surrender to American forces in Bavaria in the spring of 1945. Crucially, they did not arrive empty-handed. They brought with them not only their irreplaceable intellectual knowledge, but also thousands of crucial blueprints, proprietary technical documents, and several complete prototype components from the V2 rocket program. Their subsequent immediate relocation to the United States secured the foundational intellectual and technical cornerstone for America's future ballistic missile and groundbreaking space exploration programs. The sheer numerical scale of Operation Paperclip was astonishing and fundamentally transformative. In total, the program successfully recruited over 1,600 German scientists, specialized engineers, and high-level technicians between 1945 and 1959. These individuals, representing the cream of Germany's technical workforce, constituted a massive and highly detrimental brain drain from the defeated Axis power, simultaneously denying that expertise to the Soviet Union. The recruitment effort was intentionally broad, spanning far beyond the well-known discipline of rocketry, and included experts in fields such as high-speed aerodynamics, chemical warfare agents, specialized electronic guidance systems, precision optics, and advanced naval technology. This comprehensive acquisition created immediate, deep, and long-term strategic advantages for the burgeoning U.S. military-industrial complex across multiple technical sectors. In the immediate, chaotic post-war period, the recruited scientists and technical experts were initially accommodated and deployed to work at various Army, Navy, and Air Force facilities scattered strategically across the U.S. The critical Werner von Braun rocket team was initially established at Fort Bliss, Texas, where they began work under the command of the Army Ordnance Corps. Their initial crucial task was not invention, but reconstruction, translating thousands of pages of German designs, meticulously refurbishing captured V-2 rockets, and launching these captured weapons from the nearby White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico. This operational process effectively served as a compressed, immediate apprenticeship in large-scale, liquid-fueled rocketry, instantly jump-starting America's indigenous guided missile development program by years. The ethical and moral controversy surrounding the entire Paperclip program was not only immense, but remains a persistent historical and political thorn. Many of the most highly sought-after scientists, including key personnel in the rocket and chemical programs, were proven former members of the aggressive Nazi Party, or had been directly and knowingly implicated in the horrific use of slave labor at the notorious Mittelwerk underground factory, the mass production site for the V-2 rockets. The U.S. military, operating under the extreme pressure of national security and prioritizing technological advantage above all ethical concerns, actively engaged in a systematic process to suppress, redact, alter, or outright destroy sensitive security files pertaining to these men, necessary actions taken to legally sanitize their records and secure their essential U.S. entry visas. The internal conflicts within the U.S. government regarding Operation Paperclip were intense and highly documented. The Department of State's Office of Political Affairs and the Justice Department frequently and vehemently objected to the systematic manipulation of security files being carried out under the direction of the military, specifically the Army Ordnance Corps. Internal, declassified memos reveal sharp, foundational disagreements over the profound moral compromise inherent in actively bringing known Nazi-affiliated scientists and their families to the United States. Despite these ethical objections, the military successfully argued in the highest circles that the emerging, overwhelming Soviet threat was so critical that the German expertise represented an absolute, non-negotiable necessity for American survival and the maintenance of global defensive stability. The Soviets, equally, and perhaps even more determined to secure German intellectual property, launched their own, considerably harsher and more comprehensive recruitment program. Designated Operation Osawawiakim, often simply referred to as Osawawiakim, this involved the swift, systematic, and often forcible mass deportation of thousands of German and Austrian technical personnel, along with their entire families, to isolated scientific facilities within the Soviet Union, commencing in 1946. Crucially, and unlike the more personnel-focused American program, the Soviets concentrated their resources more on absorbing entire factory blueprints, complete machine tools, bulk equipment, and ready production lines, meticulously relocating the physical infrastructure alongside the individuals. The intellectual spoils secured by the Soviet Union through Osawawiakim were also substantial and critically important. though their program was less focused on securing charismatic celebrity scientists than the US effort. The Soviets successfully recruited top experts in essential areas like revolutionary jet engine design, junkers and BMW engineers, advanced wind tunnels and aerodynamic testing, and cutting-edge guided missile systems. The Soviet program, however, typically operated with a different philosophical approach. They often kept the German scientists under much closer political supervision, denied them the ultimate direct control over the programs, and often housed them in specialized guarded facilities, providing them less independent authority than the American military afforded men like Wernher von Braun. The pivotal von Braun team's transfer to the Army's newly established and highly resource-intensive Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, in 1950, marked a profound and permanent shift in American technological history. Huntsville rapidly evolved into the unquestioned epicenter of American rocket development, swiftly earning the famous nickname Rocket City. Once there, the German team rapidly leveraged their V-2 experience to develop the Redstone Intermediate Range Ballistic Missile, IRBM, a direct, scaled-up descendant of the V-2, which became America's first fully operational large ballistic missile, ready for deployment against the emerging Soviet threat. Operation Paperclip irrevocably influenced the strategic trajectory of American military technology for decades, providing immediate and lasting advantages. The German scientists were utterly pivotal in foundational areas such as sophisticated guided missile technology, e.g., the Corporal missile, advanced radar systems for tracking, anti-aircraft defense networking, and the complex development of high-altitude flight suits and closed-loop breathing systems. Their accumulated expertise provided the U.S. with crucial technological shortcuts that effectively bypassed what would have otherwise been years of expensive, time-consuming, and potentially unsuccessful indigenous research and development efforts. The official, highly questionable security loophole utilized by the military to admit these potentially compromised individuals was rooted in the legal doctrine of compelling circumstances, necessitated by urgent national interest. While the Department of Justice retained the nominal responsibility for standard immigration and naturalization, the military effectively took unilateral operational control over the entry of the selected scientists. They were legally classified and processed as special military employees or alien specialists, rather than as standard immigrants. This specific classification was a deliberate maneuver that allowed the military to bypass standard, mandated FBI background checks and existing legal prohibitions against admitting individuals connected to war crimes. The integration of the German scientists into American life was designed to be total and seamless. They were not viewed simply as short-term contractors. They were fully and structurally integrated into the American scientific establishment. They were actively encouraged to publish research papers, lecture at major universities such as Caltech and MIT, and crucially, to directly mentor and train the next generation of American students and engineers. This complete and deep integration was essential to the program's long-term goal, not merely to temporarily utilize their existing German knowledge, but to rapidly transfer, institutionalize, and permanently absorb that knowledge within key U.S. academic and military institutions, ensuring long-term technological self-sufficiency. The post-war program effectively manufactured a pervasive, secret history deeply embedded within the U.S. government and scientific community. For many years, public knowledge concerning the sensitive Nazi pasts of high-profile figures like Wernher von Braun remained strictly limited or was actively and successfully suppressed by the military security apparatus. The full, unvarnished truth only began to emerge in earnest in the 1970s and 1980s, largely through persistent investigative journalism and the slow declassification of Cold War government records, leading to a decades-long, necessary reckoning with the ethical compromise that underpinned America's scientific foundation. The profound scientific legacy of Operation Paperclip extends considerably beyond the realm of liquid-fueled rocketry. The German scientists were also instrumental in the nascent, critical field of aerospace medicine and human factors engineering. Their research, much of which was tragically conducted under the extreme and deeply unethical conditions of wartime Germany, such as high-altitude and hypothermia experiments, became foundational to the world's understanding of the physiological stresses inherent in high-altitude and high-speed flight. This knowledge directly informed the design of early space capsules, crucial life support systems, and the rigorous selection and training protocols for America's first astronauts. The true defining test of the paperclip scientists' value and the subsequent failure of the American missile program came with the shocking Soviet launch of Sputnik 1 in October 1957. The unexpected success of the Soviet satellite sent a massive psychological and political shockwave through the US, instantly and dramatically galvanizing the government to escalate the nascent space race. This pivotal event led directly to the formation of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, in 1958, and the immediate public elevation of Wernher von Braun and his German team from obscure military specialists to highly visible national heroes, now tasked with the ultimate mission, putting an American satellite and eventually an American astronaut on the moon. Von Braun's highly cohesive team became the indispensable core of the Marshall Space Flight Center, MSFC, in Huntsville, Alabama, which was designated as NASA's primary heavy rocket development facility. Their crowning achievement was designing and overseeing the construction of the colossal Saturn V rocket, the definitive multi-stage launch vehicle that successfully propelled the Apollo missions to the moon. The Saturn V, while unquestionably an American achievement in industrial scale and integration, was philosophically, technologically, and structurally rooted in the sophisticated German V2 liquid propellant technology and the unique engineering philosophy developed at Peenemünde. The German scientific contributions were also significantly profound, though often kept even more hidden and clandestine in the extremely sensitive areas of chemical and nuclear weapons research. Experts recruited in related fields like advanced explosives, complex propellants, specialized guidance systems, and reactor technology provided crucial insights and institutional knowledge that were highly relevant and immediately applicable to America's rapid post-war expansion of its nuclear arsenal and the complex development of effective, reliable delivery systems, ensuring the necessary readiness for strategic deterrence during the tense, early Cold War. The successful acquisition and utilization of these 1,600 expert personnel significantly contributed to the overall U.S. technological superiority and the sustained economic boom of the 1950s and 1960s. Their technological influence extended far beyond purely military projects, deeply impacting the development of advanced commercial aviation, supersonic jets, swept wings, specialized optics for defense and civilian use, and even aspects of early analog and digital computing. Their collective presence demonstrably accelerated the pace of American post-war innovation and solidified the U.S. position as the world's unquestioned technological leader. The ethical compromise remains the most persistent, difficult, and complex aspect of Operation Paperclip for historical reflection. The program demonstrated a clear, pragmatic hierarchy of values within the U.S. military-political establishment, where national security, technological dominance, and military necessity were definitively deemed superior to moral accountability for past crimes and associations. Historians, ethicists, and politicians continue to rigorously debate whether the profound technological advantage gained by the U.S. ultimately justified the deep moral taint and the profound compromise inherent in employing former Nazi collaborators and associated personnel in high-profile, sensitive government positions. The eventual, individual fate of the recruited scientists was highly varied, reflecting the complexity of their individual pasts and their subsequent utility to the U.S. government. The vast majority were granted full U.S. citizenship, lived out their highly successful careers in prestige, and became respected members of the American scientific establishment, often enjoying comfortable post-war lives. However, a small minority, notably a few who were proven to be higher-ranking SS members or more directly and personally tied to atrocities, were eventually exposed to public scrutiny and forced to leave the country in the later decades, though this typically occurred long after their critical, foundational technical work had been irrevocably completed. In the final comparative analysis, the American program was generally considered more successful than the Soviet effort in harnessing the long-term, inventive potential of the recruited German talent. The US provided considerably greater resources, more institutional freedom, a better standard of living, and a clearer, more desirable pathway to full citizenship and professional advancement within the open scientific community. This environment ensured that the German scientists remained contentedly in the US, where they effectively transferred and institutionalized their knowledge to an entirely new, highly capable generation of American engineers and scientists. Operation Paperclip and its Soviet counterpart, Operation wwII, together represent one of the most unprecedented, massive, and ethically dubious resource grabs in modern history, fundamentally transforming the technological and ideological landscape of the nascent Cold War. It solidified the critical, non-negotiable notion that human capital, scientific and engineering genius was the ultimate, most decisive strategic weapon, fundamentally and immediately accelerating the global competition for space exploration, nuclear superiority, and comprehensive technological dominance between the two newly emerged global superpowers. The enduring legacy of Operation Paperclip is visible and physically tangible in the most iconic artifacts of the Cold War and the space age, the foundational Redstone missile and the mighty, definitive Saturn V rocket. These colossal, unprecedented achievements stand as an irrevocable and controversial testament to the post-war recruitment program that allowed the United States to secure essential foundational knowledge, effectively leapfrog its own scientific development, and ultimately achieve the crucial, highly desired victory in the intense, global race to the moon.